Jacob Miller had always carried grief like a second skin. For 5 years, he lived with the belief that his twin babies, born too early, too fragile, had not survived the delivery. The memory of that hospital night was etched into his mind like a scar. The sterile smell of antiseptic, the soft hum of machines, Melissa's pale face on the bed, and the doctor's hushed words, "I'm sorry. They didn't make it." That night had broken him. He had sat in the hospital parking lot, clutching his steering wheel, screaming into the darkness until his throat burned raw. After that, the world became quieter, duller. Melissa never wanted to talk about the babies, never wanted to visit any grave. She claimed the hospital handled the burial privately. Jacob, though puzzled, didn't press. He thought it was her way of coping. He mourned alone. Every birthday that should have been, every Christmas that felt emptier, he lit 2 candles on the mantel, whispering apologies into the flickering light. Melissa, meanwhile, poured herself deeper into social events, into shopping, into distractions. They lived under the same roof, but the distance between them grew like a canyon. Until that night. It was a Thursday when Jacob found the folder. He hadn't been snooping. He was searching their walk-in closet for his old leather jacket when a cardboard box tipped over, spilling papers. At first, he thought it was just tax records. But the neat black binder inside told a different story. The first page hit him like a gunshot. Private adoption agreement, 2 infants. Jacob's eyes blurred. He blinked hard, scanning the rest. Medical records, signatures, notarized documents. The mother's name, Melissa Ann Miller. The father's signature line, empty. Someone had left it blank. At the back of the folder were bank statements. Large sums deposited into Melissa's personal account around the time of the twins' supposed death. Tens of thousands of dollars. Jacob's hands shook violently as he sank onto the edge of the bed. His stomach churned, bile rising in his throat. His babies hadn't died. They had been sold. Sold like property, like furniture someone no longer wanted. Hours passed in silence as Jacob sat frozen, the papers spread around him like shattered glass. When the front door opened and Melissa's heels clicked against the hardwood floor, he didn't move. "Jacob," she called out, setting her purse on the counter. "You're home early." He couldn't speak. Instead, he held up one of the documents. His eyes locked on hers, filled with a rage he had never felt before. Her gaze flickered to the paper, then back to him. And then, to his horror, she didn't gasp or break down. She sighed, poured herself a glass of Chardonnay, and leaned against the counter as if she'd been waiting for this moment. "The babies didn't die, Jacob," she said flatly, her tone chilling in its casualness. "I sold them." The words crashed into him like a freight train. He stumbled back, his chest tightening, breath short. "You, what?" His voice cracked, barely human. "I sold them," Melissa repeated, swirling her wine like she was discussing the weather. "We needed money. Your business was tanking. The bills were piling up, and I wasn't about to live like some broke nobody. At least this way, they got families who could give them everything we couldn't." Jacob's knees nearly gave out. He gripped the edge of the dresser to steady himself. "They were our children, Melissa. My children. You sold them like, he couldn't finish the sentence. His throat burned with fury and heartbreak. "Don't act like you're some saint," she snapped, her composure hardening. "You couldn't even keep your company afloat. What kind of life would those kids have had with you? Constant debt, stress, disappointment. I gave them something better. And I saved us both from drowning." His vision blurred with tears, the room spinning. He thought back to all those nights he'd wept alone, thinking Melissa was too broken to face the grief. But she hadn't been grieving. She'd been lying. "You let me believe they were dead," Jacob whispered, his voice hoarse. "For 5 years, you watched me break, watched me mourn, and you never said a word." Melissa shrugged, her eyes cold, lips curling into something dangerously close to a smirk. "You wouldn't have understood. You're too sentimental. Always were." The final thread inside Jacob snapped. He lunged forward, slamming his fist onto the counter inches from her glass. The wine sloshed over the rim, dripping onto the marble. "You're a monster," he seethed, trembling from head to toe. "You sold our flesh and blood, for money. You didn't save us. You destroyed us." But Melissa didn't flinch. She leaned in, her voice icy and deliberate. And what are you going to do about it, Jacob? Those kids are gone. They belong to someone else now. There's nothing you can do. Her words echoed in his skull long after she had gone upstairs to bed. That night, Jacob sat alone in the living room, the documents spread across the coffee table. His grief had transformed into something sharper, something unrecognizable. He was no longer just a broken father. He was a man betrayed at the deepest level. And as the clock ticked past midnight, Jacob made a silent vow. He would not let Melissa's betrayal stand. He would find the truth. He would find his children. And he would make sure Melissa paid for every single lie she had told. For 5 years, Jacob Miller had mourned in silence. Now, for the first time, he felt alive with purpose. Melissa had no idea, but her world was about to shatter. The morning after Melissa's cold confession, Jacob Miller wasn't the same man who had collapsed in grief 5 years earlier. Something inside him had hardened. The betrayal had carved away the weakness, leaving only a father burning with a single purpose, to uncover the truth and reclaim what was stolen. Melissa went about her life as if nothing had happened. She smiled at brunch with her friends, updated her social media with polished photos, and planned a weekend trip to Napa. To her, the matter was closed. The children were gone, and Jacob was too broken, too sentimental, to fight. She had no idea who she was dealing with. The investigation. Jacob's first call was to Mark DeLuca, a private investigator and old friend from his college baseball team. Mark had served in law enforcement before branching into private work. He was tough, resourceful, and most importantly, loyal. Jacob, Mark said after listening to his trembling account, "This is sick. But if what you're saying is true, I can find them. It won't be easy. Private adoptions like this are sealed tight. But paper trails always exist." For weeks, Mark dug through bank statements, notarized contracts, and communication records Jacob had salvaged from the folder. Slowly, pieces fell into place. Melissa had worked with a shady adoption broker in Nevada, a man already under investigation for trafficking. Through him, the twins had been placed with 2 wealthy families, one in California, the other in Texas. When Jacob saw the photos Mark printed out, his knees buckled. 2 children, 5 years old, bright-eyed and smiling. His children, his flesh and blood. Tears blurred the images as he pressed the photos to his chest. For the first time in 5 years, his grief was joined by hope. But hope came with fire. He couldn't simply knock on doors and reclaim them. The law was not on his side. Melissa had signed his rights away behind his back. To the courts, it was legal. But Jacob had something else now, evidence. Building the case. Jacob spent nights compiling everything into organized files. He documented Melissa's fraud, the hidden bank accounts, the illegal broker, and her damning confession. Mark helped him prepare sworn statements. Every night, Jacob imagined the day his children would learn the truth, that their father hadn't abandoned them, hadn't sold them, hadn't given up. That he had been deceived but never stopped fighting. Melissa began noticing his absence at home. "Where have you been sneaking off to?" she asked one evening, her tone suspicious. "Work," Jacob said curtly, not meeting her eyes. Melissa narrowed her gaze but let it slide. She was too comfortable, too arrogant to believe Jacob had any fight left in him. That arrogance would be her downfall. The arrest. It happened on a Friday morning. Melissa had just poured her second cup of coffee when red and blue lights flooded their quiet suburban street. "Jacob, what?" she began, but before she could finish, 3 squad cars pulled up. Detectives and uniformed officers swarmed the front yard. Within moments, Melissa was in handcuffs, shouting, "This is a mistake. Get your hands off me." Neighbors peeked from behind curtains and stood on porches, whispering in shock. Melissa, the picture-perfect suburban wife, was dragged screaming down the driveway. Jacob stood in the doorway, arms crossed, watching silently. "You'll regret this," she screamed at him, her mascara streaking down her cheeks. "You'll never see them again. You hear me? Never." Jacob said nothing. He simply handed Detective Harris a thick folder, the same one Melissa thought she had hidden away forever. Inside was everything. Adoption contracts without his signature, proof of forged notary stamps, bank deposits, and transcripts of conversations with the broker. Mr. Miller, Detective Harris said, flipping through the pages, this is enough to bury her. Jacob nodded, his expression grim. Do it. The fallout. The story exploded in the media. Suburban wife arrested for selling her own children. Melissa's face was plastered across every news station, every website. Former friends abandoned her, charities cut ties, and even her parents disowned her. Her trial drew massive attention. Prosecutors charged her with fraud, child trafficking, and conspiracy. Facing years in prison, Melissa sat in the courtroom pale and trembling, a stark contrast to the arrogant woman who once sipped wine while confessing her crime. Jacob testified against her, his voice steady but raw with emotion. She led me believe my children were dead, he told the jury. For 5 years, I mourned something that wasn't true. She didn't just betray me, she betrayed them. She stole their right to a father. Melissa's lawyers tried to spin the narrative, that she acted out of desperation, that she gave the children better lives. But the evidence was overwhelming. The jury didn't take long. Guilty. Melissa was sentenced to 20 years in federal prison. The fight for his children. Melissa's downfall was only half the battle. Jacob knew reclaiming his children would be even harder. The adoptive families had legal custody, and by all accounts, they were good, loving parents. The courts were reluctant to uproot children who had known no other life. But Jacob wasn't deterred. He filed motions, petitions, appeals. He poured his heart into every word. I did not consent. I was deceived. I never abandoned them. Months stretched into years. The fight drained his finances, tested his will, and forced him to confront judges who looked at him with pity but little power. Still, he persisted. He began sending letters through the court, messages that one day, when the twins were old enough, would be delivered. In those letters, he told them the truth. He told them about the night they were born, about the candles he lit every year, about how he never stopped loving them. They'll know, Jacob, Mark reassured him. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow. But one day, they'll know you never gave up. A father's promise. Years later, Jacob stood outside the gates of a private school in California. He wasn't allowed contact yet, the courts had made that clear. But as the children spilled out, laughing and running, he saw them. A boy and a girl, with familiar eyes and familiar smiles. His children. His heart clenched, tears welling up, but this time they weren't tears of grief. They were tears of hope. He whispered to himself, I'll wait. As long as it takes. You'll know me someday. You'll know the truth. Behind him, the world whispered about Melissa, the woman who sold her own children and lost everything. She rotted in prison, her name synonymous with betrayal. But Jacob didn't care about her anymore. His fight was no longer about revenge. It was about love, persistence, and the unbreakable bond of a father to his children. Melissa thought money would save her. But in the end, it was Jacob's love, and his relentless fight for the truth, that shattered her world and rebuilt his own.